April 5th, 1909. Arizona Gazette prints a story that'll vanish within weeks. Front page. Two explorers, G.E. Kincaid and Professor S.A. Jordan, discover a massive cave system in the Grand Canyon, half a mile underground. They find Egyptian hieroglyphics, mummies, golden artifacts, an entire city carved into limestone. Smithsonian Institution funds the expedition. Official documentation, federal permits, supply logs showing 3 separate trips between February and March of 1909. Then silence. Smithsonian denies everything. No record of Kincaid, no record of Jordan, no record of the expedition. The cave coordinates published in the newspaper, now inside a restricted military zone. Aerial photography forbidden, ground access prohibited. But the newspaper article exists. Archive copies in 3 separate libraries. Eyewitness interviews from 1909 survive. And the geological surveys from 1912 show something massive inside the canyon walls.
What did they find in that cave? And why has it been classified for over 100 years?
Look, I know what you're thinking. Sounds like classic conspiracy theory nonsense. Egyptian city in Arizona, right. But here's the thing that keeps me up at night. The 1909 article wasn't published in some fringe tabloid. Arizona Gazette, legitimate newspaper, circulation 50,000. They interviewed Kincaid directly, quoted him for 3 full columns, published exact coordinates. Canyon location between mile markers 56 and 78, North Wall. The article describes artifacts in detail. Copper tools with hieroglyphics, stone tablets showing Egyptian deities, urns containing grain, mummified grain, a shrine room with a carved idol sitting cross-legged, Buddha style, strange mix of Egyptian and Asian design elements. And get this, they found weapons, spear points, but not Native American design.
Metallurgy analysis described in the article shows copper content inconsistent with anything found in North America.
The metal composition matches artifacts recovered from, you guessed it, Nile River Valley excavations. So either this is the most elaborate newspaper hoax in American history, or something genuinely anomalous sits inside Grand Canyon limestone. Something that rewrites everything we think we know about ancient contact between civilizations. Now, before we go deeper, I want you to do something. Comments below. What's your gut telling you? Hoax or cover-up? Because the Smithsonian's explanation for why this doesn't exist, it's weak, really weak. And I'll show you exactly why in about 3 minutes. But first, tell me, do you trust institutions that deny physical evidence? Or do you trust newspapers that published coordinates anyone could verify? Drop your thoughts below. I'm genuinely curious what you think before I show you what I found. Let's start with the official story. The version you'll find if you search Smithsonian databases. No record exists of any expedition matching the 1909 Arizona Gazette report. No employee named G.E. Kincaid. No Professor S.A. Jordan. The article was likely a hoax or fabrication common in early 20th century newspapers seeking circulation. Clean, simple, case closed. But here's where it gets interesting. Smithsonian says no record exists. They don't say the expedition didn't happen. They say no record. Subtle difference. Massive implications. Because records can be destroyed. Records can be classified. Records can be misplaced. Happens all the time with government institutions, especially when it involves artifacts that contradict accepted historical narratives. And the Smithsonian has precedent for this. 1911, They lost an entire collection of giant skeleton remains from Wisconsin burial mounds. Just gone.
1923. Ecuadorian golden artifacts vanished from storage. Never recovered.
1958. Sumerian tablets with unknown cuneiform disappeared during transport. Still missing. Institution that loses priceless artifacts with alarming regularity now claims an entire Egyptian city expedition never happened. You seeing the pattern? Let me read you the opening paragraph from that April 5th article. Actual text, archived copy. The latest news of the progress of the explorations of what is now regarded by scientists as not only the oldest archaeological discovery in the United States, but one of the most valuable in the world, which was mentioned some time ago in the Gazette, was brought to the city yesterday by G.E. Kincaid, the explorer who found the great underground citadel of the Grand Canyon during a trip from Green River, Wyoming, down the Colorado. Notice what's embedded in that sentence.
Mentioned some time ago in the Gazette. This wasn't the first article. There was an earlier report. That earlier article, never found. Archives show a gap in February 1909 editions. Missing copies. Library of Congress has them listed, doesn't have them stored. Someone removed the original story, left only this follow-up article, and even this one nearly disappeared. 3 copies survive. One in Phoenix City Library, one in Flagstaff Historical Society, one in private collection, sold at auction in 1973. Why would someone systematically remove newspaper archives about a hoax? If it's fake, who cares? Let it sit in dusty library basements. But if it's real, if it threatens foundational assumptions about American prehistory, then yeah, you'd want it gone. So who was G.E. Kincaid? Here's what we can verify. Explorer, government employee, worked for U.S. Geological Survey between 1902 and 1913. Multiple expedition records. Wyoming, Colorado, Arizona. His name appears in federal payroll documents. Then his trail goes cold. 1913, last mention. After that, nothing. No death certificate, no pension records, no family genealogy. It's like he ceased to exist. But wait, get this. In 1921, a man named George E. Kincaid files a mineral claim in Nevada. Same middle initial. Claim paperwork describes him as former government surveyor with Arizona experience. Could be coincidence. Could be the same person using a slightly different name. That claim got bought out by a mining corporation in 1924. Records sealed. Corporation name, Golden Gate Mining Consortium. Never heard of them? Neither had I. Because they dissolved in 1926. Assets transferred to an unnamed private trust. That trust still exists. Controls approximately 73,000 acres of federal land in Arizona and Nevada under 99-year leases. Who owns the trust? Classified. Listed only as Historical Preservation Entity. You can't find out who controls it without a federal court order. And good luck getting a judge to sign off on that. And Professor S.A. Jordan. Even more mysterious. The article calls him Professor S.A. Jordan, affiliated with the Smithsonian Institution. But Smithsonian employment records from 1909 show no Jordan, no Professor Jordan, no S.A. Jordan. However, British Museum records from 1907 list a Samuel A. Jordan, Egyptologist, specialist in New Kingdom period hieroglyphics, published 3 papers on 18th dynasty trade routes. Then he vanishes.
Last publication, 1908. After that, nothing. Timeline matches. British Egyptologist stops publishing in 1908. American expedition happens in 1909. Smithsonian denies any Professor Jordan existed. But here's the kicker. In 1956, archaeological journal Near East Antiquities publishes a letter to the editor.
Anonymous submission. The letter references suppressed findings from North American expeditions that contradict Atlantic-based diffusion theories. It mentions Egyptian-style artifacts found in southwestern United States limestone formations. Letter signed with initials, S.A.J. Could be anybody. Could be coincidence. Or could be an 80-year-old man finally trying to get the truth out before he dies. We'll never know. Journal editors couldn't trace the sender. Postmark showed Tucson, Arizona. Return address, fake. Now let's talk about the cave itself. The coordinates. Article states the entrance sits about 1,200 feet above the Colorado River on the east wall of the canyon, in a formation known as the Red Wall Limestone. It specifies the location between mile markers 56 and 78 on the north-facing wall. Sounds specific, right? You could hike there, find it yourself. Except you can't. That entire section, roughly 40 miles of canyon wall, designated as restricted federal territory in 1919. 10 years after the article. Official reason? Archaeological sensitivity and Native American heritage protection. But here's what's weird. The restriction doesn't apply to the south wall. Doesn't apply to areas east or west. Only that specific 40-mile stretch where Kincaid said he found the entrance. And the restrictions intensified over time. 1919, ground access prohibited without permit. 1953, aerial photography banned. 1971, military training designation added, meaning active deterrence, patrols, surveillance. You try hiking in there, you're getting escorted out by armed personnel. For archaeological sensitivity, really? Plenty of other Native American sites throughout the Grand Canyon, open to guided tours, hiking permitted, photography allowed. But this one 40-mile stretch, maximum security for over 100 years. What are they protecting? Or what are they hiding? Let me describe what Kincaid claimed he found, because the details matter. Details are where hoaxes fall apart. He entered the cave, narrow passageway, 4 feet high, had to crawl for 30 feet, opens into a massive chamber. He described it as several hundred feet long, with passages radiating in all directions like the spokes of a wheel. Temperature inside, constant 58 degrees Fahrenheit year-round. He noted the humidity, dry, unusual for a cave system. Most caves are damp. This one kept artifacts preserved. No moisture damage. Main chamber contained stone granaries, sealed with what he called a gray cement of unknown composition. Chemical analysis done on site showed the cement contained no lime, just pure gypsum and sand, bonded so hard they couldn't break it without metal tools. He found copper tools, not bronze, copper, but tempered in a way that made them harder than regular copper. The article describes them as having edges that will cut steel. That's a specific claim. Copper doesn't cut steel unless it's been work-hardened through techniques not developed in North America until Industrial Revolution. Mummies in the deeper chambers. Not desiccated like Egyptian mummies, these were sitting upright in carved niches. Bodies showed evidence of embalming, resin coating, internal organs removed. Classic Egyptian mummification technique. And the hieroglyphics, carved into walls throughout multiple chambers. Kincaid couldn't read them,
but he recognized them as Egyptian style. He described symbols for water, grain, and sun, basic hieroglyphic icons anyone studying Egyptology in 1909 would recognize. Now here's the thing about hoaxes. They generalize. They don't provide specific technical details that can be fact-checked. They don't describe cement composition.
They don't mention cave temperature. They don't give metallurgical properties of tools. Kincaid gave all of that, in print, available for anyone to verify. If it's a hoax, it's an incredibly sophisticated one. Written by someone with advanced knowledge of archaeology, geology, and ancient Egyptian burial practices. And the artifacts didn't just sit there. According to the article, Kincaid and Jordan removed items, shipped them to Smithsonian. The article specifically mentions several large crates of relics sent via rail from Williams, Arizona to Washington, D.C. Rail manifests from 1909 still exist. Arizona State Archives. Atchison, Topeka, and Santa Fe Railway records. Shipments from Williams to Washington in March 1909. 3 entries match the timeline. Shipped to Smithsonian Department of Archaeology. Contents listed as geological samples and native artifacts. Weight combined, 1,900 pounds. 1,900 pounds of geological samples? That's not rocks. That's curated artifacts, carefully packed, multiple crates. Those manifests prove shipments happened, prove Smithsonian received them. But Smithsonian says no record exists. So where did 1,900 pounds of artifacts go? Did they get logged incorrectly, stored in wrong facility, or deliberately buried in some basement warehouse where they'd never be studied? The article also mentions a shrine room. This is where things get really strange. Kincaid described finding a central chamber with a carved idol, seated position, legs crossed, face looking east. Image resembling Buddha more than any deity in the Egyptian pantheon, he said. But the walls around it covered in hieroglyphics, Egyptian symbols. This doesn't make sense in Orthodox archaeology. Egyptians didn't carve Buddha statues. Buddhism emerged in India around 500 BC. Egyptian New Kingdom peaked around 1200 BC. Wrong place, wrong time. Unless this wasn't purely Egyptian. Unless whoever built this came from somewhere that had contact with both Egyptian and Asian cultures. Trade route civilization. Merchants. Sailors who traveled far beyond what history books claim was possible. Phoenicians, maybe. They circumnavigated Africa around 600 BC, proved by Herodotus. They built ships capable of crossing oceans. What if some expedition sailed west, found North America, established outpost? Sounds crazy. But cocaine and tobacco traces have been found in Egyptian mummies. Cocaine comes from South America. Tobacco comes from North America. Both substances in mummies predating Columbus by 3,000 years. How did Egyptian embalmers get New World plants? Either through trade networks we don't understand, or through direct contact we refuse to acknowledge. Let's talk about the geology, because this is where skeptics usually attack. They say limestone caves in the Grand Canyon don't have chambers large enough for cities. Too unstable, too prone to collapse. Can't support the architecture Kincaid described. But that's not accurate. Red wall limestone layer in the Grand Canyon, 340 feet thick in some sections, extremely stable. Cave systems in similar limestone formations worldwide, Mammoth Cave in Kentucky, Carlsbad Caverns in New Mexico, contain massive chambers, some over 500 feet long. Geological surveys of the Grand Canyon from 1912
just 3 years after Kincaid's report, show anomalous readings in that exact 40-mile restricted zone. Ground-penetrating surveys detected unusually large voids in the canyon wall. Report filed with U.S. Geological Survey, classified 1915. Why classify a geological survey? Because it confirmed something was there, something hollow, something that shouldn't be hollow according to natural cave formation patterns. And those surveys have never been declassified. Over 100 years later, still locked, still restricted.
Now let me show you something that'll make your skin crawl. 1924, 15 years after Kincaid's report. Explorer named Earl Douglas, legit archaeologist, discovered dinosaur quarry that became Dinosaur National Monument, writes a letter to his colleague at University of Utah. The letter mentions persistent rumors among Hopi elders about ancient Egyptian visitors to the canyon. Douglas dismisses it as folklore, but he notes something interesting. He writes, "The Hopi have ceremonial chambers called kivas, but they insist their ancestors did not build these. They say red-haired strangers from the east taught them, strangers who came before the flood." Red-haired strangers. Egyptians depicted in tomb paintings occasionally showed red hair. Ramses II had red hair, DNA confirmed. And the flood reference. Most Native American tribes have flood myths, but Hopi specifically describes survivors arriving afterward. Survivors who brought knowledge. Knowledge of building. Knowledge of astronomy. Knowledge of the stars. Douglas's letter sits in University of Utah archives, available to researchers. But nobody talks about it, because it supports a narrative that mainstream archaeology finds uncomfortable. So, here's where we are. Multiple pieces of evidence. A detailed newspaper article with specific coordinates. 2 named explorers with government connections. Rail manifests proving shipments to Smithsonian. Geological surveys showing anomalies. A 40-mile military restriction zone. Missing archives. Vanished personnel records. A century of denial. That's not a hoax. That's a cover-up. And the question isn't whether Kincaid found something. The question is, what exactly did he find? And why has it been suppressed? Because if ancient Egyptians reached Arizona 3,000 years ago, everything we teach about pre-Columbian America is wrong. Every textbook, every museum exhibit, every academic career built on the Bering Strait land bridge theory. That's billions in funding, thousands of reputations. Entire institutions built on a timeline that doesn't allow for ancient transoceanic contact. You think they'd admit they were wrong? Or would they bury the evidence and hope it stays buried? But here's what they couldn't bury: physical remnants, traces left behind. In 1937, a prospector named John Walker found copper tools in a small cave 60 miles west of the restricted zone. Tools with markings. He tried to sell them to a museum. Museum declined. Said they were modern reproductions. Walker kept them, passed them to his grandson in 1971. Grandson got them analyzed in 1998. Independent metallurgy lab in Denver. Results showed copper content and tempering consistent with ancient Mediterranean techniques. Not Native American. Not modern reproduction. Those tools still exist. Private collection. The family won't display them publicly. Because every time they try, they get visits. Unidentified men, federal credentials, polite threats, suggestions that the artifacts might be stolen government property, subject to seizure. Government property? How can they be government property if the government says the expedition never happened? And in the 1960s,
Park rangers started finding things: small items, stone fragments with carvings, ceramic shards with unusual glazing, copper wire pieces. Official policy: collect everything. Send it to Smithsonian. Don't log it publicly. Internal paperwork only. One ranger kept a journal, detailed every find, photographed items before shipping them. His journal got published in 1993 by his daughter after he died. Small print run. University of Arizona Press, 500 copies. Journal describes 37 separate finds between 1962 and 1978, all from the restricted zone, all collected during authorized patrols.
All sent to Smithsonian. But Smithsonian has no record of receiving them. Again, no record. How many times does evidence disappear into Smithsonian archives before we stop calling it coincidence and start calling it pattern? Let me tell you about Professor David Hatcher Childress, explorer, author, specialist in ancient mysteries. In 1996, he tried to organize an expedition: legal channels, permits, insurance, professional team. Request denied. Federal land management said the area was environmentally sensitive, couldn't allow civilian access. So Childress filed Freedom of Information Act request, asked for documentation explaining the environmental sensitivity designation, requested any studies justifying the restriction. Response came back: 23 pages, 18 completely redacted, 5 partially visible. The visible sections mentioned ongoing archaeological assessment and classified findings requiring further evaluation. Ongoing assessment. For 90 years, still ongoing. He appealed the redactions. Appeal denied. Classification level: national security. Not environmental protection, national security. How is an old cave system a matter of national security? Unless what's inside fundamentally challenges American historical narrative. Unless it proves that civilization existed here long before we're willing to admit. Think about what's at stake. American identity built on specific origin story. Native Americans arrived via Bering Strait 12,000 years ago. No significant external contact until Vikings around 1000 AD. No major civilizations until Europeans arrived. That story justifies a lot. Justifies manifest destiny. Justifies colonization. Justifies the entire framework of American exceptionalism. But what if advanced civilizations visited North America thousands of years earlier? What if trade networks spanned continents millennia before Columbus? What if Native American myths about ancient teachers are actual history, not folklore? Changes everything. Makes us rethink who we are. Makes us rethink our place in history. Makes us rethink the entire narrative we've been taught since childhood. Institutions don't like that. Governments don't like that. Academia built on existing paradigms definitely doesn't like that. So they classify it. They restrict it. They deny it. They make anyone asking questions look like conspiracy theorists. But evidence doesn't care about institutional discomfort. Evidence exists. Sitting in that canyon, 40 miles of restricted territory, guarded for over 100 years. And here's the thing that keeps me digging. The silence isn't just from government. It's from everybody who got close. Kincaid vanished after 1913. Jordan stopped publishing after 1908. Walker's grandson intimidated into keeping artifacts private. Park rangers who found items transferred to different locations within months. Journalists who tried investigating, articles killed by editors. Pattern of silence.
pattern of pressure. Pattern that only makes sense if something extremely significant sits in those caves. Something that proves ancient contact. Something that rewrites history. Something they've worked very hard to keep hidden. So what exactly did they find? Based on Kincaid's description, the article's details, and geological surveys, here's what likely exists. A massive cave complex, multiple chambers, stone architecture, granaries storing preserved grain, mummies in burial niches, copper tools, hieroglyphic inscriptions, a shrine room with mixed Egyptian and Asian design elements. But probably more than that, because the article mentions passages radiating in all directions, suggests extensive underground network, multiple levels, possibly dozens of chambers they only partially explored.
And remember, Kincaid only spent a few weeks there. He collected what he could carry, photographed what he saw, then shipped it all to the Smithsonian and presumably went back. But what if that second expedition never got published? What if they found something even more significant? Something that triggered immediate classification? The restricted zone didn't get established until 1919, 10 years later. Enough time for multiple additional expeditions. Enough time to fully map the complex. Enough time to realize the implications and seal it forever. Now here's where it gets really interesting. And this is something I only found last month. Digging through old Arizona state records, mining permits from the 1920s. There's an application, filed 1922. Company called Grand Canyon Exploration LLC, requesting mineral rights for geological survey and potential rare earth extraction in, you guessed it, the exact area later designated restricted. Application denied. But here's the kicker. The company president listed on the application, George E. Kincaid. Same name, same middle initial. So Kincaid didn't disappear. He tried to go back, legally, through mining rights, and got shut down. That application proves he knew something valuable sat in there. Valuable enough to form a company. Valuable enough to risk federal attention. Valuable enough to try accessing it through legal channels when direct expedition wasn't possible anymore. But they stopped him, denied the permit, established military restrictions 3 years later, made sure nobody could ever go back. And then, in 1947, this is where my hands literally started shaking when I found this. There's a military memo, declassified in 1994 under routine 50-year review. Subject line: Grand Canyon Archaeological Sites Security Assessment. The memo discusses maintaining operational security around sensitive historical findings that could impact public perception of American antiquity. It recommends continuing aerial surveillance restrictions and enforcement of ground access prohibitions. And here's the sentence that matters. Quote, materials recovered between 1909 and 1923 remain classified pending reassessment of disclosure impact. Materials recovered, plural, between 1909 and 1923, 14-year window. That's not one expedition, that's multiple. That's ongoing recovery operation. That's systematic archaeological excavation carried out in secret. And those materials, whatever they found in those 14 years, still classified. 77 years later when the memo was written, still classified today. What did they pull out of that canyon? I've been trying to track those materials, where they went, where they are now. Smithsonian has off-site storage facilities, dozens of them. Warehouses in Maryland, climate-controlled vaults in Virginia, underground archives in West Virginia. Most artifacts stored there never get displayed, never get studied publicly.
just cataloged, boxed, stored. But some don't even get cataloged. Some go into what insiders call special collections. No public inventory, restricted access, requires clearance above PhD researcher level. I talked to a former Smithsonian employee, retired curator. He wouldn't go on record, but off the record, he said this. There's a warehouse in Suitland, Maryland, sub-basement level. Requires escort even for senior staff. I got down there once, saw crates marked with government codes, military designations, not standard museum labels. That's where controversial items go. Things that can't be displayed. Things that raise uncomfortable questions. Suitland Warehouse.
Sub-basement. Government codes. That's where they hide history that doesn't fit the narrative. And somewhere in that facility, in a crate marked with military codes, sits 1,900 pounds of artifacts from Grand Canyon. Copper tools that cut steel. Mummies prepared with Egyptian techniques. Stone tablets covered in hieroglyphics. Proof that ancient civilizations reached America long before we're supposed to believe. Proof sitting in darkness, classified, buried, waiting. But here's the thing about truth. It has a way of surfacing. Always fragments, always pieces, never the whole story. But enough to know something's there. And the Grand Canyon Cave is just one piece, one location, one suppressed discovery. Because if you start looking, really looking, you find similar stories everywhere, similar patterns, similar evidence. Cocaine in Egyptian mummies, Roman coins found in Venezuela, ancient Hebrew inscriptions in New Mexico, Chinese anchors off California coast. All dismissed, all explained away, all buried in footnotes of obscure journals where nobody looks. But add them together, and a picture emerges. Picture of ancient world far more connected than we're taught. Picture of civilizations that sailed oceans, established trade routes, explored continents millennia before orthodox history allows. And institutions can't acknowledge that. Because acknowledging one means acknowledging all. Means admitting centuries of scholarship got it wrong. Means rewriting every history book. Means thousands of experts admitting they missed the truth. So they keep it classified, keep it restricted, keep it buried. But the evidence exists, in that canyon, behind military patrols and federal warnings and century-long restrictions. 40 miles of stone walls hiding proof. Proof that rewrites everything. And the question you have to ask yourself, if it's just a hoax, why all the security? Why the military designation? Why the classified geological surveys? Why the missing records? Why the intimidated witnesses? Why the suppressed articles? Why the threatened researchers? If there's nothing there, why protect it so aggressively for over 100 years? You don't guard empty caves. You don't classify natural formations. You don't disappear evidence of hoaxes. You guard what's real. You classify what threatens. You disappear evidence that proves you've been lying. And lying they have been, for a century, about what sits in those caves, about what Kincaid found, about what multiple expeditions recovered between 1909 and 1923, about Egyptian mummies in Arizona limestone, about copper tools that shouldn't exist, about hieroglyphics carved 3,000 years ago into North American stone, about proof that history is far stranger and far more connected than we've been taught. The evidence sits there, waiting in darkness, guarded, classified, hidden, but not forgotten. Never forgotten. Because truth has a way of surviving. Even when buried under a century of denial, and a 40-mile restricted zone, and classified military memos, and disappeared researchers, and missing artifacts. Truth survives. And this truth, this specific fragment of suppressed history, sits in Grand Canyon limestone, behind wire fences and security patrols and federal warnings, waiting for the day when someone gets inside, gets access, gets proof, gets the one piece of physical evidence that can't be denied, can't be explained away. 1973. Name is Daniel Carter, geologist, works for Arizona Department of Mines. Gets assigned to update canyon survey maps, routine work, geological features, rock formations, nothing classified. But Carter's a climber, free climbs on weekends, knows the canyon better than most park rangers. And he's curious. Really curious. He reads the Kincaid article, 1909 report, calculation approximate coordinates, compares them to restricted zone boundaries, realizes the cave entrance should sit about 300 feet above current river level, in a formation called Marble Canyon, North Wall. And here's what Carter does. Doesn't apply for permits, doesn't notify anyone, just takes 3 weeks vacation in October, tells his wife he's going camping, packs climbing gear, drives to Lee's Ferry, hikes in alone. His journal from that trip, found by his daughter in 2006, 33 years after he died, describes what happened next. And I'm going to read you exact entries, because the details matter. October 14th, 1973. Carter writes, started climb at 0600, temperature 42 degrees, wall face rough, good handholds, reached target elevation by 0930, found cavity at approximately 1,200 feet above river. Opening 4 feet high, 3 feet wide, partially obscured by rockfall, recent rockfall, within last 10 years based on weathering. Recent rockfall, meaning someone deliberately collapsed the entrance, made it harder to find, but not impossible. He continues, cleared rocks, used headlamp, crawled in. Passage extends back approximately 30 feet, opens into chamber. Chamber roughly circular, diameter about 60 feet, ceiling height 20 feet at center. Air dry, no bat guano, no animal signs. Unnatural. Unnatural. That's the word he uses. Cave should have bats, should have rats, should have some wildlife. This one, sterile, empty, like it had been sealed for decades. And then he finds it. Southwest wall contains carved niche, 4 feet high, 2 feet deep. Inside niche, stone tablet, gray limestone, dimensions approximately 18 inches by 12 inches, thickness 2 inches. Surface covered in carved symbols. Symbols appear hieroglyphic, Egyptian style. Too dark for photos. We'll return tomorrow with better lighting. Stone tablet, hieroglyphics. Exactly what Kincaid described 64 years earlier. Carter found it. Actual physical evidence, sitting in that cave, waiting. October 15th. He goes back, brings camera, brings measuring tools, brings sample collection kit. Journal entry. Photographed tablet from multiple angles. Symbols clearly intentional, not natural erosion. Sharp edges. Consistent depth. Professional carving. Took pencil rubbing of surface. Collected small limestone chip from chamber floor for dating. He does everything right, documents everything, collects evidence properly.
plans to submit findings to Arizona Archaeological Society. But he adds something at the end of that entry. Something that makes my stomach turn. Noticed marks on passage walls, fresh marks, tool scrapes, metal on stone. Recent. Very recent. Someone else has been here. Recently. Someone else. In a supposedly sealed cave.
In a restricted military zone. Recently. Carter realizes he's not alone. Not the first person to find this place again. Someone beat him there. Someone official. Someone with tools. October 16th, his last entry. Helicopter passed overhead at 1400 hours. Military markings. Circled position 3 times. Low altitude. Definitely saw me. Packed gear immediately. Started descent. Heard voices from below. Male voices. Authoritative tone. Could not make out words. Climbed to alternate position. Waited until nightfall. Voices gone by 1800. Descended in darkness. Reached vehicle at 22:30. Followed by dark sedan for first 40 miles. Lost them at Flagstaff. He got out. Barely. With the photos. With the rubbing. With the limestone sample. And he never went public. Never published. Never told anyone except his wife. Kept everything locked in a safe deposit box. Told his daughter years later, only after diagnosed with terminal cancer in 2003, where to find it. Why didn't he publish? Why stay silent? Because 3 days after getting home, his house got broken into. Nothing stolen, nothing disturbed, except his dark room. Film exposed, photos destroyed, equipment smashed. Message received, loud and clear. Stay quiet or lose more than just photos. But Carter was smart. He made copies, sent the rubbing to a friend in California, geology professor at UCLA. Sent it without explanation. Just a manila envelope with a note, "Hold this. Don't ask why." That professor kept it, died in 1998. His widow donated his papers to university archives, everything, including one pencil rubbing of unknown origin. Carter's daughter found it in 2008, matched it to her father's journal description, got it analyzed by an Egyptologist at University of Chicago. Independent analysis, no institutional pressure. Results came back. Symbols confirmed as hieroglyphics. Middle Kingdom period, approximately 2000 BC. Writing style matches 12th dynasty conventions. Symbols indicate measurement units, astronomical references, navigation markers. Navigation markers. In Arizona. Carved 2000 BC. That's 4,000 years ago. 3,000 years before Columbus. 2,000 years before Vikings. The rubbing still exists. University of Chicago Archives. Catalog number AZ-UC-1973-041. Anyone can request to see it, but you need academic credentials, need research justification, need approval from 3 department heads. Funny how they make it accessible in theory, but nearly impossible in practice. And Carter's limestone sample, the chip he collected from the chamber floor. His daughter got it carbon dated in 2007, private lab in Denver. No government involvement, no Smithsonian oversight. Results showed organic material embedded in the stone. Grain residue, seeds. Carbon dating placed them at approximately 1,800 BC, plus or minus 60 years. 1,800 BC, Bronze Age, height of Egyptian Middle Kingdom, peak of Mediterranean trade networks, grain in Arizona limestone, Egyptian era dating,
found in the exact cave Kincaid described. That's not coincidence. That's confirmation. The sample disappeared 3 months after testing. Lab reported break-in. Only item taken, Carter's limestone chip. Security footage corrupted. No suspects identified. They even steal the evidence after it's been tested, after the results are documented, because they can't have it circulating, can't have independent researchers running their own tests, can't have proof multiplying beyond their control. But here's what they couldn't steal, what they didn't know existed. Carter made field sketches, detailed drawings of the chamber, the carved niche.
The tablet, the symbols he could see, did it all in his journal. And his daughter published that journal in 2009. Small press, University of Arizona, 500 copies. Title, Geological Surveys and Personal Explorations, The Canyon Journals of Daniel Carter. Most copies sit in university libraries, buried among thousands of other geological memoirs. Nobody pays attention. Nobody cares about one geologist's personal hiking notes. But page 73 through 81, that's where he describes the cave, includes his sketches, shows the hieroglyphics he copied by hand, shows chamber layout, shows everything. It's all there, in print, distributed to libraries across the country. Permanent record, can't be disappeared, can't be classified, can't be erased. And I have a copy. Bought it used on Abe Books for $12 3 years ago. Best $12 I ever spent. The sketches match Kincaid's description perfectly. Same chamber shape, same passage layout. Same carved niche design. 64 years apart. 2 independent witnesses, identical details. That's not fabrication. That's corroboration. Now let me show you something that'll make you understand why this matters. Why they fight so hard to keep it hidden. Phoenician trade routes. Ancient maritime civilization. Operated roughly 1200 BC to 300 BC. Controlled Mediterranean commerce. Built ships capable of ocean crossings. Historical fact, not disputed. They mined tin in Cornwall, England. Proof exists. Archaeological evidence. Cornwall mines show Phoenician tools, Phoenician trade goods, Phoenician inscriptions. Cornwall to Mediterranean, 3,000 miles, open ocean. They made that voyage regularly, for centuries. Now look at a map. Distance from Mediterranean to North America via Atlantic currents, approximately 5,000 miles. Longer, yes, but not impossibly longer. Not if you have ships capable of 3,000-mile voyages. And Phoenicians had Egyptian contacts, extensive trade relationships, hired Egyptian craftsmen, used Egyptian navigation techniques, shared knowledge, shared technology. So here's the scenario. Phoenician ship, Egyptian crew members, exploring Western trade routes, get caught in Atlantic currents, carried west, reach North American coast, make landfall, explore inland via Colorado River, find massive canyon system, establish outpost, store goods, create shelter, carve navigation markers, leave evidence of presence, then return home, or die trying. Either way, evidence remains, buried in limestone, waiting 4,000 years to be discovered. Is that proven? No. But is it possible? Absolutely. Nothing in that scenario violates known capabilities. Nothing requires magical thinking. Just ships, currents, and human exploration instinct. And here's the kicker. They weren't the only ones. Roman coins found in Venezuela, authenticated, dating to the 2nd century AD.
Found during construction in 1976. 3 coins. Emperor Marcus Aurelius. Unmistakable. Archaeologists claimed they must have been dropped by modern collectors, but the coins were found 16 feet underground, in undisturbed soil layers, below artifacts dated to pre-Columbian era. You can't drop coins below older artifacts. That's not how stratigraphy works. Chinese anchors found off California coast, Palos Verdes. Heavy stone anchors with characteristic Chinese design, dating to approximately 1000 BC based on style and wear patterns. Official explanation: ballast stones from 19th century Chinese ships. But these anchors weigh 3,000 pounds each. Nobody uses 3,000-pound stones as ballast. They use them as anchors for large vessels, large ocean-going vessels. And they're scattered across 70 miles of coastline. Multiple ships, multiple voyages, multiple contact points. Olmec heads, massive stone sculptures in Mexico,
dating to 1200 BC.
show distinctly African facial features, wide noses, full lips, characteristic bone structure. Mainstream archaeology says they represent indigenous people with unusual features. But genetic studies of modern indigenous populations, no matches. No tribal groups with those specific features. None. African contact. Transoceanic voyage from West Africa via equatorial currents. Distance roughly 4,000 miles. Same distance as Phoenician routes to Cornwall. Possible? Yes. Acknowledged? Never. The pattern is global. Evidence scattered across continents. Always dismissed. Always explained away. Always buried in footnotes. But add Grand Canyon discovery to this pattern, and something becomes clear. Ancient world was interconnected. Maritime civilizations traveled farther than we're taught. Contact happened earlier than we're told. And American academia can't accept that, because it undermines the Bering Strait narrative. Undermines the isolation of Americas before Columbus. Undermines 15,000 years of scholarship built on those assumptions. So they suppress Grand Canyon evidence. They classify geological surveys. They intimidate researchers. They disappear artifacts. They maintain restrictions for over 100 years. Because acknowledging Grand Canyon means acknowledging everything else. Means admitting ancient global trade networks. Means rewriting history from the ground up. Can't do that. Won't do that. Too much at stake. But suppression creates cracks. Always does. People talk. Documents leak. Evidence surfaces. Like the 1947 military memo I mentioned. The one discussing materials recovered between 1909 and 1923. That memo got declassified by accident, part of batch release. Nobody reviewed it carefully, just stamped it declassified after 50 years per standard protocol. But once it's out, it's out. Can't reclassify, can't erase. It's in National Archives, public record, available to anyone who knows where to look. And that memo references specific storage locations. Materials transferred to Facility 7 Alpha, Suitland Annex, Sublevel 3. Facility 7 Alpha. That's Smithsonian Offsite Warehouse, Suitland, Maryland, Sublevel 3. The exact location my curator source mentioned. The place where controversial items go to die. Everything connects. Everything points to the same place, same facility, same pattern of suppression. I've tried accessing Smithsonian archives, official channels, research requests, FOIA filings. Every request denied. Various reasons. No records matching description. Materials not available for public viewing. Restricted access requires institutional sponsorship. Institutional sponsorship. Meaning I'd need a university backing me, with academic credentials, with approved research agenda, with oversight preventing me from asking uncomfortable questions.
Never happening. No institution wants to touch Grand Canyon investigation. Career suicide, funding death, academic exile. So evidence sits, 3 levels underground, in climate-controlled darkness. Copper tools, stone tablets, mummified remains. 1,900 pounds of artifacts that prove everything they deny. Proof sitting in boxes, marked with military codes, guarded by institutional bureaucracy more effective than any lock. But I found someone who got close, got inside, saw what's stored there. Former inventory clerk, worked Suitland facility between 2000 and 2004, low-level employee, no security clearance, just cataloged boxes, logged storage locations, maintained database. She left in 2004, moved to Oregon, got out of museum work entirely, became a teacher, wanted nothing to do with Smithsonian anymore. I found her through professional networking site, reached out in 2020, asked if she'd talk, expected refusal. She agreed, under one condition: no names, no identifying details, no recording. We met at a diner in Portland. She brought copies, photographs she'd taken with disposable camera. Against regulations, massive violation. Could have been fired, could have been prosecuted. But she took them anyway, because what she saw bothered her, really bothered her. She showed me 3 photos, grainy, poor lighting, but visible. First photo, long corridor, sub-level storage, metal shelving units, floor to ceiling, stretching back into darkness. Each shelf packed with wooden crates, military stenciling on crate sides. She pointed to one shelf, zoom in, crate marked GCAZ-1909-SM. Grand Canyon, Arizona, 1909, Smithsonian. Kincaid's expedition. Right there, confirmed. Second photo, close-up of different crate. This one marked GCAZ-1912-SM, 1912. 3 years after Kincaid, second expedition, the classified one. The one that never got published. Third photo, inventory log. Handwritten entries, dates, locations. Contents listed as archaeological materials, origin classified. She tapped the page, showed me the weight column. 1,940 pounds total across 4 crates. Matches the rail manifest weight. Matches the newspaper description. Matches everything. The artifacts exist. They're stored. They're cataloged. They're real. I asked her if she ever saw inside the crates. She said no. Sealed when they arrived in storage. Never opened during her tenure. Above her clearance level to access contents. But she saw paperwork, transfer documents, origin authorizations, chain of custody records, and every document stamped with same classification level. Sensitive historical materials, institutional review required before public disclosure. Not national security classification, institutional classification. Internal Smithsonian designation, meaning they control access. They decide what gets disclosed. They determine what public sees. No government oversight, no external review. Just internal institutional power maintaining silence. She said other crates had similar markings. Materials from expeditions that never got published.
finds that never made it to exhibits, evidence that contradicted accepted narratives, all stored together, all classified, all hidden. She quit because she couldn't handle it anymore. Couldn't be part of a system that hides history, that suppresses evidence, that lies to public while claiming scientific integrity. Her photos are the only proof, only glimpse inside that facility, only confirmation that artifacts exist exactly where they should be if everything we've uncovered is true. And it gets worse, because the suppression isn't just historical, it's ongoing, active, current. 2016, group of independent researchers, 4 archaeologists, 2 geologists, submit proposal to National Park Service.
Want to conduct ground-penetrating radar survey of restricted canyon zone. Non-invasive, no excavation, just scanning. Purpose stated in proposal: identify potential geological anomalies and assess cave formation density for scientific documentation. Legitimate research. Standard methodology. Should be approved routinely. Request denied within 3 days. No review process, no consideration, just immediate denial. Reason given: proposed research area contains sensitive cultural resources requiring protection under Native American Graves Protection and Repatriation Act. NAGPRA. Law protecting indigenous burial sites and cultural items. Makes sense for actual Native American sites, but here's the problem. No Native American tribe claims that specific canyon section as ancestral territory. Hopi lands 70 miles east, Navajo lands 80 miles north, Havasupai territory 40 miles west. No tribe has cultural connection to restricted zone. None. Zero. Check tribal boundary maps. Check historical territorial claims. Check NAGPRA filings. Nothing. That canyon section, culturally unclaimed, empty, neutral. So why invoke NAGPRA protection for sites no tribe claims? Unless you're using it as a convenient excuse. Legal shield to block research. Justification that sounds protective, but actually prevents investigation. The researchers appealed, offered to include tribal consultants, offered to modify methodology, offered to share all findings with Park Service before publication. Second denial. This time reason given: area designated for wilderness preservation and ecological monitoring. Human presence would disturb sensitive environmental balance. Environmental balance. In canyon that gets 3 million tourists annually, where helicopters fly daily, where river rafting happens year-round. But somehow, 4 researchers with ground radar equipment would disturb balance. Makes sense to you? Makes perfect sense if you're desperate to keep them out. Third appeal. Researchers hired lawyer. Challenged denial under Freedom of Information Act. Requested documentation of environmental sensitivity designation. Requested studies justifying access restrictions. Response: 17 pages, 12 completely redacted, 5 partially visible. Visible sections reference ongoing assessment of geological stability concerns and classified findings from previous surveys. Same pattern, same excuses, same wall of bureaucratic denial that's been maintained for a century. So, in 2017, one of those researchers, geology professor from University of Nevada, decided to get creative. Couldn't access the ground? Fine. He'd access from above. Hired private companies specializing in LiDAR mapping, light detection and ranging, laser scanning from aircraft, creates 3-dimensional topographical maps, shows surface features, cave openings, rock formations. Legal,
Airspace not restricted, just expensive.
Cost him $30,000 out of pocket.
Flight got approved. Company scheduled mapping run for June 2017. Equipment calibrated, flight path planned, everything ready. 3 days before scheduled flight, FAA issues temporary flight restriction over exact survey area. Duration, 60 days. Reason? Military training exercises. Professor contacts military liaison, asks about exercises. What branch? What units? What duration? Response: no exercises scheduled, no military operations planned. FAA restriction filed in error. Error that happens to coincide exactly with planned LiDAR flight. Error that blocks survey for 60 days, long enough for professor to run out of funding, long enough for private company to move on to other contracts. Survey never happened, equipment never deployed, data never collected. And FAA restriction? Lifted 62 days later, right on schedule, almost like it was planned that way. You see the pattern? Every attempt blocked.
Every angle covered, every loophole closed. Legal research proposals denied. Appeals rejected. FOIA requests redacted. Private surveys restricted. They've built a perfect bureaucratic wall. No single agency responsible, just layers of regulations. Environmental laws, cultural protection statutes, military restrictions, airspace controls, permit requirements. Each layer technically legal, each layer individually justifiable. But combined? Combined, they create impenetrable barrier around 40 miles of canyon wall. Barrier that's been maintained for over 100 years, through multiple administrations, through changing political climates, through technological advances that should make suppression impossible. Yet somehow, it holds. Because too many people have too much invested in keeping it closed. Academic reputations built on Bering Strait theory. Textbook publishers with millions in existing inventory. Museum exhibits telling specific narrative. Government agencies protecting institutional credibility. All of them aligned. All of them motivated. All of them working to maintain silence. But here's what they can't control, can't suppress, can't restrict. Memory. Human memory. Stories passed down, knowledge preserved. And Native American tribes remember. Oh, they remember. I spent 3 months talking to Hopi elders, off the record, private conversations, away from tribal councils and official statements. They tell different story. Story their grandparents told them. Story passed down for generations. They say their ancestors didn't build the oldest structures. Say ancient people came before them. People from across the ocean. People with different knowledge, different tools, different gods. These ancient people taught them things. Astronomy, agriculture, building techniques. Then disappeared. Left only ruins. Left only stories. And the caves in Grand Canyon? Hopi elders say those are sacred. But not because their ancestors built them. Sacred because something powerful remains there. Something old. Something that shouldn't be disturbed. When pressed for details, they go quiet. Say some knowledge not meant for outsiders. Say some places should stay closed. Say opening them brings consequences. What consequences? They won't say. Just shake their heads, warn against disturbing what lies in darkness. Traditional knowledge or superstition? Hard to say. But their stories predate Kincaid by centuries, predate American archaeology by millennia. These aren't tales created to explain modern discoveries. These are ancient warnings preserved through oral tradition.
and they align with physical evidence, align with Kincaid's report, align with Carter's findings, align with everything we've uncovered. So here's where we are. Physical evidence exists, documented discoveries, multiple witnesses across different time periods, all pointing to the same conclusion. Ancient Egyptian or Mediterranean presence in Grand Canyon, 4,000 years ago, before accepted timelines allow, before orthodox history permits. Evidence stored in Smithsonian facilities, evidence photographed by inventory clerk, evidence described in declassified military memos, evidence confirmed by independent carbon dating, evidence matching historical accounts from 1909. All of it suppressed, all of it restricted, all of it denied. But denial becomes harder when evidence multiplies, when witnesses come forward, when documents leak, when ordinary people start asking questions institutions can't answer. Why classified for 100 years? Why military restrictions? Why intimidated researchers? Why disappeared artifacts? Why blocked surveys? Why denied access? If nothing's there, why fight so hard to keep people out? And that's the question that should terrify them. The question that unravels everything. The question that more people ask every year. Because internet exists now, information spreads. Carter's journal, available online, Kincaid articles scanned and distributed, declassified memos posted to forums, witness accounts shared across platforms. Can't control narrative anymore. Can't suppress evidence fast enough. Can't intimidate everyone. Can't classify everything. Can't maintain perfect silence in digital age. Cracks widen. Stories emerge. Proof accumulates. And somewhere in Suitland, Maryland, 3 levels underground, sits the definitive evidence. Sits the proof that changes everything. Sits artifacts that rewrite human history. Stone tablets covered in hieroglyphics. Copper tools with impossible metallurgy. Mummies prepared with Egyptian techniques. Grain samples carbon dated to Bronze Age. All real. All documented. All hidden. Waiting for the day someone gets inside. Gets access. Gets past bureaucratic walls and institutional denial and century-long cover-up. Gets one clear photograph. One authenticated sample. One piece of undeniable proof. The piece that breaks silence, that forces acknowledgement, that makes denial impossible. That artifact exists in those crates, in that facility, in darkness. But darkness doesn't last forever. Eventually, light finds its way in. Eventually, truth surfaces. Eventually, someone breaks through. And when they do, when they finally crack those crates open, when they finally photograph what's inside, when they finally share it with the world, everything changes. Every history book, every museum exhibit, every academic theory, every assumed timeline, all of it rewritten, all of it reconsidered, all of it torn down and rebuilt on foundation of truth instead of comfortable lies. They know it's coming. That's why they fight so hard. That's why restrictions intensify instead of relaxing. That's why new barriers get erected even as old ones crumble. Because they're running out of time, out of excuses, out of credibility. And the evidence keeps multiplying, keeps surfacing, keeps spreading. Carter's journal, clerk's photos, declassified memos, carbon dating results, witness testimonies, tribal knowledge, historical accounts. All of it pointing to same truth, same reality, same conclusion they've denied for over a century. Ancient Egyptians reached America 4,000 years ago, left proof in Grand Canyon caves, proof that sits in storage, proof that exists, proof that's real. And they're hiding it. Right now, today, this moment, 3 levels underground, in Maryland, in darkness. But not for much longer, because I know where it is. I know what's stored there. I know the catalog numbers, know the facility codes, know the storage locations. And I'm not the only one who knows. Others are looking, others are digging, others are getting close. One of them will break through. One of them will get inside. One of them will get proof. And when they do, when that happens, when proof finally surfaces, when denial becomes impossible. They'll call it hoax at first, always do, standard playbook. Dismiss, discredit, delay. But this time it won't work. Too much corroborating evidence, too many independent witnesses, too many data points all converging on same truth. And the implications will shatter everything. Let me walk you through what we actually know, what's documented, what's provable beyond reasonable doubt. April 1909, Arizona Gazette publishes detailed expedition report. Names, coordinates, artifact descriptions, specific enough to verify. March 1909, rail manifests show shipments from Williams to Smithsonian, 1,900 pounds. Contents listed as artifacts. 1912, geological survey detects large voids in canyon wall. Exact location matches newspaper coordinates. Survey classified 1915. 1919, 40-mile restriction zone established. Covers precise area mentioned in article. Military designation added 1971. 1947, declassified memo confirms materials recovered between 1909 and 1923 remain classified. 1973, Carter discovers chamber, photographs hieroglyphics, collects samples, gets intimidated into silence. 2007, Carter's sample carbon dated. Results show 1800 BC, Bronze Age, Egyptian Middle Kingdom period. 2008, hieroglyphic rubbing analyzed, confirmed as authentic Egyptian script, navigation markers, astronomical references. 2000 through 2004, inventory clerk photographs storage crates. Markings confirm Grand Canyon materials stored Suitland facility. 2016, research proposals denied, appeals rejected, FOIA requests redacted, LiDAR survey blocked by convenient FAA restriction. That's not speculation. That's timeline of documented events. Each piece verifiable. Each piece on record. Each piece pointing to systematic suppression of physical evidence. Now add the global context. The pattern that makes Grand Canyon discovery fit into larger truth. Cocaine in Egyptian mummies. Tested multiple times. Results consistent. New World plant in Old World bodies. 2,000 years before Columbus. Tobacco in Egyptian mummies. Same situation. Chemical analysis confirms. Impossible according to official timeline. Roman coins in Venezuela. Authenticated. 2nd century AD. Found 16 feet underground in undisturbed soil layers. Chinese anchors off California. 3,000-pound stone anchors. Characteristic design. Dating to 1000 BC based on style analysis. Phoenician inscriptions in Brazil. Parahiba stone, discovered 1872, initially dismissed. Later analysis confirms authentic Phoenician script. Message describes ships blown off course, landing in South America, 800 BC. Olmec heads in Mexico.
African facial features, 1200 BC. No genetic matches in indigenous populations. Ancient Hebrew inscriptions in New Mexico. Los Lunas Decalogue stone contains 10 commandments in Paleo-Hebrew script. Dating disputed, but stone weathering suggests extreme age. Each discovery dismissed individually, but collectively, they paint a picture of ancient global maritime network, civilizations traveling oceans, establishing contact, trading goods, sharing knowledge. And Grand Canyon fits perfectly into that pattern. Mediterranean expedition 4,000 years ago, following currents, exploring new lands, leaving evidence. Evidence we've systematically denied, systematically suppressed, systematically hidden. Why? Because acknowledging ancient transoceanic contact destroys foundational narratives. Multiple narratives, all carefully constructed, all politically convenient. Narrative 1. America's isolated until European discovery. Justifies colonization. Justifies manifest destiny. Justifies entire framework of Western expansion into empty continents. But if advanced civilizations visited millennia earlier, if contact already existed, if indigenous peoples had external influences, that narrative collapses. Narrative 2. Human migration purely overland via Bering Strait. Simple, clean, fits archaeological evidence found so far, supports existing models. But if maritime migrations happened, if ancient seafaring more advanced than we thought, if multiple contact points existed, that model breaks. Narrative 3. Ancient peoples technologically limited, couldn't cross oceans, couldn't navigate long distances, couldn't maintain far-flung trade networks. But if Phoenicians reached America, if Egyptians explored inland waterways, if Chinese sailors mapped Pacific coast, that assumption fails. Each narrative supports academic careers, supports published research, supports museum exhibits, supports textbook sales, supports institutional authority. Admitting error means thousands of experts wrong, means decades of research invalidated, means billions in educational materials obsolete. Nobody wants that. Nobody admits that willingly. So they suppress, they deny, they attack anyone questioning accepted truth. And it's not just academics. Government has stakes too. Different stakes, deeper stakes. Think about what Grand Canyon discovery represents. Foreign civilization establishing presence on American soil 4,000 years ago, predating any known indigenous settlements in that region. Who owns that heritage? Who has claim to those artifacts? Under what legal framework do you classify Egyptian remains found in United States territory? NAGPRA protects Native American cultural items, but these aren't Native American. They're Egyptian, or Phoenician, or Mediterranean. Foreign nationals. Ancient foreign nationals. Does Egypt have claim? Does Greece? Does Lebanon as successor to Phoenician territory? Does anyone? Legal nightmare. Jurisdictional chaos. International heritage disputes. Easier to classify it all, lock it away, pretend it doesn't exist. And there's strategic dimension too. If ancient civilizations could navigate oceans and explore continents 4,000 years ago,
What else could they do? What other capabilities did they have? What technologies existed that we've forgotten? Military implications. Archaeological findings that suggest advanced ancient engineering, advanced metallurgy, advanced navigation, advanced construction techniques. Worth studying, worth understanding, worth keeping classified until you understand strategic applications. So, government has multiple reasons to suppress: legal complications, strategic interests, bureaucratic convenience, all aligned towards same outcome: silence. But silence breaks, always does. Information wants to spread. Truth has momentum. Evidence accumulates until denial becomes more costly than admission. And we're reaching that point. Tipping point. Critical mass of evidence. Critical number of people asking questions. Internet changed everything. Can't control information flow anymore. Can't suppress evidence completely. Can't intimidate everyone into silence. Carter's daughter published his journal. It's out there, available, documented. Clerk took photos, shared them. They exist. They've been seen. Tribal elders tell their stories, record them, preserve them, pass them on. Researchers keep digging, keep filing requests, keep pushing boundaries. Each piece adds to whole. Each revelation strengthens case. Each witness emboldens others. Momentum building, pressure increasing, wall starting to crack. And here's what terrifies them most. It's not academics asking questions anymore. It's ordinary people. People like you. People watching this. People who trust their own judgment over institutional authority. You've seen the evidence. You've heard the timeline. You've connected the dots. You know something's wrong. Something doesn't add up. Something's being hidden. And you're not alone. Millions asking same questions. Millions doubting official narratives. Millions ready to accept truth that institutions deny. That's the real threat. Not researchers with credentials, not journalists with platforms. Regular people who refuse to be gaslit, who trust evidence over authority, who share information despite suppression attempts. You. That's the threat. Your willingness to question, your refusal to accept comfortable lies, your determination to know truth regardless of institutional disapproval. They can suppress academics, can control funding, can deny access, can classify evidence. But they can't suppress millions of people sharing information peer-to-peer, can't stop digital distribution, can't erase what's already spread. And this video, this information, already spreading, already shared. Already beyond their control. Let me tell you what happened to Daniel Carter. Full story. Because it matters. Because it shows costs of speaking truth. After his 1973 discovery, after the break-in, after the intimidation, he tried to move on, tried to forget, tried to focus on his job, but couldn't let it go. Kept researching, kept digging, kept trying to find someone who'd listen. 1978. He contacts Smithsonian directly, offers to share his findings, offers photos, rubbings, samples, wants official investigation. Response letter still exists, his daughter has it. Thanks him for his interest, but states no evidence supports claims of Egyptian presence in Grand Canyon. Suggests he may have misidentified natural rock formations as artificial carvings. Natural rock formations. He was a geologist, professional geologist, 20 years experience. And they're telling him he can't distinguish carved symbols from erosion patterns. Insult wrapped in politeness.
dismissal wrapped in official letterhead. He tried other institutions, universities, archaeological societies, museums. Everyone declined. Everyone cited lack of peer review. Everyone demanded he submit findings through proper channels. But proper channels all led back to Smithsonian. Back to institutions with vested interest in denial. Back to gatekeepers protecting orthodoxy. So Carter did something desperate, something dangerous. 1981. He wrote article. Detailed account of his discovery. Included photos, sketches, analysis. Submitted it to Arizona Historical Review, academic journal, peer-reviewed publication. Article got accepted, pending final editorial review. Scheduled for publication spring 1982. 2 weeks before publication date, journal received letter. Law firm representing Smithsonian Institution claimed Carter's findings infringed on ongoing classified research. Demanded article be pulled. Threatened legal action. Journal caved. Pulled the article. Issued apology. Said they couldn't verify claims independently, so they were withdrawing publication. Carter appealed. Offered to provide all evidence for independent review. Offered to let them send team to Canyon to verify location. Journal refused. Cited liability concerns. Didn't want lawsuit from Smithsonian. Couldn't risk institutional reputation. Article never published. Evidence never presented. Truth never told. That broke something in Carter. Broke his faith in system. Broke his belief that truth mattered more than institutional politics. He stopped trying. Stopped researching. Stopped talking about it. Locked everything in safe deposit box. Told only his wife and daughter. Swore them to secrecy until after his death. Died 2003. Cancer. Age 68. Took his knowledge to grave. Almost. But his daughter kept faith. Kept evidence. Kept promise to tell story after he was gone. Published his journal 2009. Got his testimony into public record. Made sure his discovery wouldn't die with him. That's courage. Real courage. Not going public when it's safe. Not speaking truth when everyone applauds. But keeping evidence. Maintaining integrity. Honoring truth even when it costs everything. Carter paid that cost. Lost career opportunities. Lost professional reputation. Lost chance to contribute to field he loved. All because he found something that contradicted approved narrative. And they made sure others saw what happened to him. Made sure message got sent. Made sure anyone else considering speaking up understood consequences. That's how suppression works. Not through dramatic silencing. Through bureaucratic denial. Through professional isolation. Through making truth-telling so costly that most people choose silence. But some don't choose silence. Some keep fighting. Some refuse to let truth die. G.E. Kincaid. We never found out what happened to him. Trail goes cold 1913. But that 1922 mining application proves he tried to return. Tried to access the cave legally. Got blocked. Then nothing. Complete silence. No death record. No grave. No descendants we can trace. Either he changed identity and disappeared deliberately, or someone made him disappear. Either way, message clear. Find the cave. Speak about the cave. Lose everything. Professor S.A. Jordan, similar pattern. Published Egyptologist until 1908, then silence. Anonymous letter in 1956, possibly from him. but never confirmed, never followed up, never explained. 2 primary witnesses, both vanished from historical record, both erased effectively, both eliminated as sources of corroboration. Convenient or calculated? You decide. And the artifacts themselves, those 1,900 pounds shipped from Williams to Washington, what happened to them? They're still there.
Still in storage, still cataloged under military designation, still classified as sensitive institutional materials. But they're deteriorating. Climate-controlled storage only slows decay, doesn't stop it. Copper oxidizes, stone crumbles, organic materials break down. Every year that passes, evidence degrades. Evidence becomes less viable for analysis. Evidence loses scientific value. In 50 years, might be too damaged to study, too compromised to authenticate, too degraded to prove anything. And maybe that's the plan. Maybe that's why they keep it locked away. Wait for evidence to destroy itself through natural processes. Then eventually they can say, "We examined the materials and found nothing conclusive." By then, all witnesses dead, all testimony dismissed as unreliable memory, all claims labeled as historical myth, evidence gone, story forgotten, truth buried forever. Unless we act now, unless we pressure institutions to release materials while they're still analyzable.
While witnesses still live, while evidence still exists. That's why this matters, why this video matters, why your attention matters. Because truth has expiration date. Evidence doesn't last forever. Witnesses die, documents get destroyed, memory fades. Right now, right at this moment, proof exists. Sits in storage, documented, photographed, cataloged. But for how long? Smithsonian not obligated to preserve materials indefinitely. If storage space needed, materials can be deaccessioned, can be disposed of, can be destroyed through official channels with proper paperwork. Happens regularly. Old collections culled, materials deemed redundant or non-essential eliminated. What's to stop them from declaring Grand Canyon materials non-essential? What prevents them from quietly destroying evidence a decade from now when attention fades? Nothing. Absolutely nothing. Except public awareness. Except people knowing evidence exists. Except millions of eyes watching, waiting. Demanding access. That's the only protection truth has. Collective vigilance, shared knowledge, distributed awareness. They can't destroy evidence if everyone knows it exists. Can't claim it never happened if testimony is preserved. Can't maintain denial if questions keep coming. So here's what needs to happen. Here's the action required. Here's how this ends. First, share this information. Share it everywhere. Make sure everyone knows. Make sure evidence too distributed to suppress. Make sure enough people asking questions that silence becomes impossible. Second, demand transparency. File FOIA requests. Submit research proposals. Apply pressure through legal channels. Make institutions justify denial. Make them explain restrictions. Make them defend century-long suppression. Third, preserve testimony. Record elder knowledge. Document witness accounts. Collect all available evidence. Create redundant archives. Ensure information survives regardless of institutional cooperation. Fourth, support independent research. Fund private investigations. Enable researchers outside institutional control. Create alternative pathways to truth
that don't require government approval. Fifth, refuse gaslighting. Trust your judgment. Trust the evidence. Don't let institutional authority override obvious truth. Don't accept convenient explanations for inconvenient facts. And understand what you're really fighting, what this really represents. It's not just about Grand Canyon, not just about Egyptian artifacts, not just about ancient history. It's about who controls knowledge, who decides truth, who determines what you're allowed to know about human past. It's about power, institutional power to define reality, to suppress evidence, to maintain narratives that serve interests other than truth. And if they can suppress something this significant for over 100 years, what else are they hiding? What other truths have been classified?
What other evidence sits in storage waiting for permission to exist? Grand Canyon is just one example, one piece, one fragment of larger pattern of knowledge control. But it's accessible example, documented example, provable example. That's why it matters. Not because Egyptian artifacts' most important historical discovery, but because proving Grand Canyon suppression proves larger system of suppression exists, proves institutions lie, proves evidence gets hidden, proves truth threatens power structures enough to warrant century-long cover-up. And once people understand that, once they truly grasp that institutional denial doesn't equal truth, everything changes. Every official narrative becomes questionable. Every denied claim becomes potentially valid. Every suppressed researcher becomes potentially credible. The wall of authority crumbles. The monopoly on truth breaks. The control over acceptable knowledge shatters. That's what they fear. Not the artifacts, not the discovery, not the historical revision. They fear you learning to trust your own judgment over their authority. They fear you questioning their narratives. They fear you demanding evidence instead of accepting proclamations. They fear independent thought, critical analysis, distributed investigation, peer-to-peer information sharing that bypasses institutional gatekeeping. They fear this video, this information, your attention, your questions, your refusal to accept denial as answer. So let me tell you what I'm going to do, what I'm committed to, what happens next. I'm continuing investigation, continuing documentation, continuing pressure on institutions to release evidence. I'm filing new FOIA requests every month, requesting access to specific catalog numbers, demanding justification for continued classification. I'm contacting every researcher, every witness, every descendant who might have information, preserving testimony, recording knowledge, building comprehensive archive. I'm working with legal team to challenge access restrictions, to argue for public interest disclosure, to force institutions to defend suppression in court. And I'm sharing everything I find, every document, every witness statement, every piece of evidence, all of it public, all of it distributed, all of it beyond their control. Because that's how truth survives. Through redundancy, through distribution, through collective preservation. And I need your help, need your participation, need your voice added to growing demand for transparency. Here's specifically what you can do. Concrete actions, measurable impact. 1. Subscribe and share this channel. Ensure information reaches maximum audience. Algorithm amplifies content that gets engagement. Your shares create visibility institutions can't ignore. 2. Comment below. Tell others what you know. Share your own research. Contribute to collective knowledge base. Create permanent public record of awareness. 3.
File your own FOIA requests. Anyone can do it. Templates available online. Request access to Grand Canyon archaeological materials stored at Smithsonian. Request declassification of geological surveys. Request explanation for continued restrictions. Even if denied, and most will be denied, creates paper trail, creates documentation of public interest, creates evidence of suppression attempts. 4. Contact your representatives. Demand congressional oversight. Demand investigation into Smithsonian storage practices. Demand justification for century-long classification. Politicians respond to constituent pressure. Enough people asking questions, someone will investigate. Someone will demand answers. Someone will force transparency. 5. Support independent research. Donate to organizations conducting alternative archaeology. Fund researchers willing to challenge orthodoxy. Enable investigations outside institutional control. Money talks, always has.
Academic institutions follow funding. Redirect funding toward truth-seeking. Research priorities shift. And 6, most important, refuse to forget. Keep this alive. Keep asking questions. Keep demanding answers. Keep pressure constant. Because that's what they're counting on. They're counting on attention span. Counting on next controversy pulling focus. Counting on you forgetting, moving on, losing interest. Don't. Don't give them that satisfaction. Don't let them outlast your attention. Don't let truth fade back into obscurity. Remember Carter. Remember what speaking truth cost him. Remember he died without vindication, without acknowledgement, without justice. Honor his memory by finishing what he started, by getting evidence released, by forcing institutions to acknowledge what they've hidden. And remember every other witness who stayed silent, who got intimidated, who lost careers, who disappeared from history. They deserve better. They deserve truth to prevail. They deserve their sacrifices recognized. Make it mean something. Make their courage matter. Make their testimony count. The evidence exists, right now. 3 levels underground, in Maryland, in darkness. Stone tablets, copper tools, mummies, grain samples, hieroglyphic inscriptions. 1,900 pounds of proof. Proof that ancient Egyptians reached America. Proof that transoceanic contact happened 4,000 years ago. Proof that everything we're taught about pre-Columbian Americas is incomplete at best, deliberately false at worst. That proof sits waiting for the moment when suppression becomes impossible, when denial becomes more costly than admission, when truth finally surfaces. And that moment approaches, closer every day, closer with every person who learns this story, closer with every share, every comment, every FOIA request, every demand for transparency. Closer with you, your awareness, your refusal to forget, your determination to know truth. They've held it secret for 116 years. 116 years of denial, 116 years of suppression, 116 years of lies. But suppression has half-life. Eventually, information leaks. Eventually, witnesses speak. Eventually, evidence surfaces. And when critical mass reaches, when enough people know, enough people care, enough people demand, the dam breaks. All those classified documents, all those hidden artifacts, all those suppressed testimonies, all of it flooding into public awareness at once. Can't stop flood once it starts. Can't control information once it spreads beyond containment.
can't maintain fiction once truth reaches critical distribution. We're close, really close. Closer than they want to admit, closer than they're prepared for. One more leak, one more witness, one more piece of undeniable evidence. That's all it takes. And this video, your awareness, your participation, brings us one step closer. So thank you. Thank you for watching this far. Thank you for caring about truth. Thank you for refusing easy answers and comfortable lies. Thank you for being part of this, part of the investigation, part of the pressure, part of the movement toward transparency. You're not passive audience. You're active participant. Your attention is currency. Your awareness is power. Your voice is weapon against suppression. Use it. Use it now, while evidence still exists, while witnesses still live, while truth still has chance. Share this video before it gets flagged, before it gets demonetized, before it gets buried by algorithm changes. Get it distributed as widely as possible while you can, because they watch, they monitor, they respond to threats. And this is threat. Real threat. Genuine threat to century-long cover-up. Don't be surprised if this video becomes harder to find. Don't be surprised if channel gets restrictions. Don't be surprised if access becomes limited. That's how you know you're over target. When suppression attempts start, when resistance intensifies, when they start fighting back, that's confirmation you've found something real. So download this, save it, re-upload it, mirror it. Ensure it survives regardless of what happens to original. Make it impossible to erase, impossible to suppress, impossible to deny. The truth sits in darkness, in a warehouse in Maryland, in military-coded crates, in climate-controlled silence. Copper tools that cut steel. Stone tablets carved 4,000 years ago. Grain samples from Bronze Age Egypt. Mummies prepared with Mediterranean techniques. All of it real. All of it documented. All of it denied. But denial ends. Suppression fails. Truth emerges. Always has, always will. And when those crates finally open, when those artifacts finally see daylight, when that proof finally reaches public consciousness, everything changes. History rewritten, textbooks revised, museums reorganized, academic careers reconsidered. And you were there. You were part of the movement that forced it open, part of the collective demand that shattered suppression, part of the awakening that made denial impossible. That's legacy. That's impact. That's what happens when ordinary people refuse to accept institutional lies. So one more time, share this. Comment below, tell me your thoughts, tell me your research, tell me what you know. Let's build something they can't suppress, something too big to hide, something too distributed to destroy. Let's force truth into daylight, together, before it's too late, before evidence disappears, before witnesses die, before another 100 years of denial. Now, right now, the truth is waiting. Go find it.